Whew. Hi there. This is Noveljutsu, and I'm your host, Raelyn. Last time I talked about how Avatar The Last Airbender's main theme affects the motivations and needs of the major characters, but its themes affect the world building in the show too. Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Knitsko have been quite open about how the idea for their epic tale evolved, in part from their interest in Eastern philosophy and martial arts films. As a martial arts enthusiast who grew up with old Jackie Chan movies and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I approve.
Pork rind?
Pork rind.
Though they didn't brainstorm their theme first, the theme of honor is earned for yourself by trying to make the world a better place is enriched and uplifted by the universe Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Knitsko created. So whether you come up with theme first or plan to use your theme to patch some holes in your novel after you've written your first draft, Avatar The Last Airbender provides a great example on how to do it well. In this post, I'm going to go over 2 goals you should have in mind when looking at your world building from the perspective of theme, and 6 aspects of world building you can use to facilitate the themes in your novel. So, let's dive in. In the last episode, I mentioned how your chosen theme should suggest conflict. In the case of Avatar's theme, the main point of conflict the show explored was honor, since what is honorable is defined differently by different people. After you've determined what point of conflict you want to explore in your theme, you want to find a setting that is going to breed that conflict. In effect, this means whether you're setting your story in the real world or in a world of your own creation, your setting should allow for the existence of characters who believe your theme is true, as well as for those who don't, and your setting should also facilitate the collision of those 2 or more groups of people. Avatar wouldn't have worked thematically if it had been set in a place where everyone agreed on a single definition of honor, and likewise, you're going to want to set your story in a place where your characters can explore your theme. But how do you build a world for your theme? Let's take a look at 6 aspects of world building that Avatar utilized. If you like to use the real world to help build a foundation for your story, there's a lot of history and culture across the globe to go through. With a topic like honor to consider, the creators of Avatar could have chosen almost any real-world setting to inspire the story they wanted to tell, but perhaps there are few places with quite the deep and lasting relationship with capital H honor that's found in several East Asian cultures. The concept of honor as a code of ethics and conduct has a long history in many of these East Asian nations. The effects of that history are still seen today. Setting the story of Avatar in a world so deeply inspired largely by such East Asian cultures gives more context to how viewers interpret the kind of honor the show discusses. You'd be forgiven for thinking the geography of Avatar has nothing to do with the concept of honor. In the strictest sense, it doesn't. But what the geography of Avatar does is segregates the people. People separated by sea, mountain ranges, swamps, or by gravity tend to develop differently in terms of industry and culture, and therefore in what they would view as honorable behavior. With the vast landscape of the Avatar universe, there were so many towns for our main characters to stop in, so many cultures to interact with, and so many conflicts, large or small scale, to test the characters' understanding of honor. What if Aang, Sokka, and Katara had never left the South Pole? The writers might still have pulled off a conversation about honor, but because a community as small and isolated as the Southern Water Tribe is likely to have a narrower view on the subject, the show's theme by necessity would have been much more narrowly focused as well. There's nothing wrong with a small, intimate setting and a laser focus, but the creators wanted a wide, sweeping tale with action and... If you're writing fantasy with magic, your magic system is a wonderful tool to help you depict your themes. The magic system developed for Avatar, The Last Airbender, is, of course, bending, one of the 4 elements through martial arts. But what do those 4 elements have to do with honor? Well, in Avatar, the series shows us that each of the 4 forms of bending has strengths that can be used in honorable as well as dishonorable ways. We know firebending can be used for honorable purposes, such as keeping someone from freezing to death, heating a cup of tea, or for helping to advance the Fire Nation's technology in ways the other nations have been unable to do for themselves. But we also know firebending is used to harm others, and that the Fire Nation has used its technological advances to oppress the other nations. Instead of treating those qualities as random attributes of the element, the show embraces them in its conversation about theme. This is carried through with the other elements as well. Waterbending can heal people, but it also has bloodbending, which the show depicts in no uncertain terms as dishonorable. Though Toph joins the Avatar to help save the world, we first meet her when she's using earthbending for selfish pursuits, and we later even see her use earthbending to cheat others. As Aang is the only airbender we see outside of flashbacks, we learn less about honorable versus dishonorable uses of airbending through him, though Book 3 of The Legend of Korra certainly gives us a view of how airbending can also be used dishonorably. The point is, the art of bending in Avatar: The Last Airbender, while awesome, is never just about being awesome. It is constantly being used to reveal character, to world build, and to depict the theme. But even if you're not writing fantasy, you can still use a magic system to enhance your themes. In science fiction, technology is often the equivalent of a magic system. The choices you make in regard to what the technology's purpose is, how that purpose is directed or abused, and who is and who is not allowed to use that technology can all impact your themes. Even if you're not writing speculative fiction at all, you can still use real-world technology as a vessel for your theme. A phone can represent a desire to connect with others. A house can represent a happy family or an unhappy one. The technologies you incorporate in your novel can be almost characters in themselves, and as such, they can be used to explore theme. Building a history for your world can give context to how your theme plays out within your story. In Avatar, the world has been beset by war for 100 years. But the writers of the show don't oversimplify the situation by saying all war is dishonorable. While the Fire Nation certainly is depicted as villainous for the imperialistic nature of their war, the war only happened because the rest of the world fought back, justifiably, and continued to perpetuate the war. So in the writer's view, war in and of itself, though ultimately always horrible, isn't necessarily dishonorable. The reasons for entering the war and the methods used to fight it matter, and the show doesn't shy away from depicting how even some of those who are technically fighting on the right side of the war are still doing so dishonorably. Even the act of avoiding war can be seen as a dishonorable choice. When we first meet the Kyoshi warriors, a man from the town says something that could be mistaken for a throwaway line.
Kyoshi stayed out of the war so far, and we intend to keep it that way.
However, despite their intent, war comes to Kyoshi in a terrible way. After the Avatar's visit to the island, after the town has witnessed firsthand what innocents caught in the war are suffering, the Kyoshi warriors are inspired to leave home and join the war in their own way. First by aiding refugees, then by confronting Azula to protect Appa, and finally by Suki joining in on direct attacks against the Fire Lord's fleet. In a small but significant way, the writers of Avatar are saying that ignoring the oppression of others when you have the power to help is dishonorable, and it's a lesson Suki and her warriors learn well. Perhaps one of the most interesting ways to world build your themes into your novel is through developing different cultures in your story. How do the cultures and subcultures you create view your theme? Where do they misunderstand your theme, and how has that affected people within that culture? How do their values, rituals, and languages impact their view of the theme? I already mentioned bending under magic systems, but in the Avatar universe, bending is very closely tied to culture too. Take a look at the Fire Nation's Agni Kai. This is a duel steeped in ritual. Though the show doesn't give us the rule book, we understand clearly that an Agni Kai has rules of conduct inextricably tied to the honor of those involved. When Zhao attempts to strike Zuko from behind after Zuko had shown mercy and victory, Iroh tells Zhao that this act was dishonorable. Designing peoples and cultures to inhabit your world can be a rewarding experience, but be careful if you intend to use real-world cultures to depict your themes. It's too easy to stereotype or pass moral judgment on a culture that's different from yours. Remember that the religions and cultures you depict are a way of life for many people, and blundering around with someone else's culture can be harmful. Diverse stories are important and definitely encouraged, but make sure that you're treading carefully. I touched on this when I spoke of technology, but the symbology used in your story is another great way to depict your theme. Avatar has lots of symbols, but the one I'd like to focus on is Zuko's scar. Zuko's scar represents his dual nature and his struggle with honor. The show repeatedly uses it to remind us that Zuko's understanding of honor has been corrupted by his father's abuse, and it's also used to telegraph to the audience much about Zuko's conflicting thoughts. When Zuko is committing actions based on a corrupted definition of honor, such as when he returns to the Fire Nation after betraying his uncle, or when he's battling with confusion about which path he should follow, the show will often focus on the burned side of his face. It's a not-so-subtle reminder that Zuko's sense of right and wrong has been poisoned. I like to think that this shot of Zuko from the Crossroads of Destiny, depicting him shortly before he betrayed Uncle Iroh, was deliberately included as a hint that he hadn't changed as much as he thought he had, that he was still struggling, and that he was about to make a decision he would very much regret later on. When, however, Zuko is acting based on a true sense of honor, or at least trying to, such as when he walks away from his father after telling him that he's joining the Avatar, the frame will often zoom in on the unscarred side of Zuko's face to reinforce that he's moving in the right direction. As a writer, you can pour meaning into almost anything: an object, a color, a smell, and if you want, you can use that symbol to help convey your theme too. That's it for this video. I know I've done a lot of videos about theme lately, but I still have one more to wrap up this discussion. So stay tuned for one more lesson from Avatar on how to incorporate theme. What's your favorite way to show theme through world building? Is there something I missed in my list that you'd like to share? Go ahead and comment below, or you can hop on over to the transcript of this video on my blog. Links to my website and all of my social media are below. If you liked this video, feel free to like and maybe share it. Consider subscribing and ringing the bell, and I'll see you again next time.